Luego, Sewaguego, everybody. Welcome to Sacred Spaces, honoring our elders. Today we're featuring Gloria, Miss Lovely Gloria, one of our wonderful elders here in New York City. But we have a good crew of community members, and we're going to be engaging in some, I guess, her journey and storytelling and conversation and digging deep into our stories, which lay within our elders, not his story, but our stories. So I hope you all enjoy the conversation. Leave questions on the Facebook Live comment section. We'll be checking in every now and again. My name is Yagawi Hene Oaks. I'm the Executive Director of the American Indian Community House. I'm Snipe Clan, Haudenosaunee Mohawk. Thank you for joining us today. Tanis.
Tansi, Nito Tinpek, Tanis Peranto, Nitsigasan, Naya Apitawigosisan, Sagitawak Nitsotin. Hi everybody, my name is Tanis Peranto. I am Métis from Peace River, Alberta. I work with the American Indian Community House. I'm the events and media manager. I also run the Fit Native program. And I've had the pleasure of working with Gloria in previous plays that we've staged. Gloria, I dug up one of your bios. Is it okay if I read a little bit of it?
Yeah.
This one was from, I think, an interview you did with Westbeth. It says, Gloria Miguel started out in show business at an early age in circus sideshows with her family. Decades later, in the mid-70s, Gloria and her sister Elizabeth, Lisa Mayo, joined up with their sister Muriel in forming Spider-Woman Theater. Spider-Woman has been delighting and educating audiences with plays about women's issues and indigenous matters ever since, both in North America and overseas. Their productions include Women in Violence, Lysistrata, Numba, Sun, Moon, and Feather, Reverberations, Power Pipes, and Winnetoo's Snake Oil Show from Wigwam City, which I'm sad that I missed that one. In addition to her work in theater and film, Gloria Miguel has taught drama, led workshops, and served as a drama consultant. She and her sisters each received an honorary doctorate of fine arts from Miami University in 1997. Gloria continues to perform recently in Material Witness, which Spider-Woman developed with Loose Change Productions and the Canadian company On Matogzi. Thank you for joining us, Gloria.
Woohoo! It's fun. I don't know how I got here, but I'm here.
We talked you through the Zoom again, and now you've done it a whole second time. It's a little bit easier this time, wasn't it?
Did you ask me a question just now?
Was it a little bit easier this time with the Zoom?
A drop easier. I don't want to touch it. I'm afraid I'm going to lose everybody.
Anyone has any questions, just some general housekeeping, type in the Facebook comment section, or if you're on Zoom, just type in the chat box.
Maybe Rick can go ahead and do a small opening blessing for us.
I don't understand what you just said. I'll just do what? Start talking? Hello?
Yes.
Should I just start talking? About me? What?
Rick, did you hear what Melissa said?
I think so. Yeah, it broke up a little bit.
Can you do a quick opening for us to open up the space?
Okay.
Please?
Okay.
Thank you.
Hauka, Lemiyuta Menue, Yapa, Rikiwoya Nishi, Ijan. I'm Rick Chavoya, Kumiai, on the board with the American Indian Community House, and just welcome everyone and blessings. And, during this time, it's just a chance to really just remember and more deeply think about how incredibly important our elders are to us, and the voice they bring to us, and the knowledge they bring to us, and how that's going to always help guide us and always has helped guide us through all circumstances. We're under particularly unusual difficult circumstances. It's a very challenging time, but it is in fact the guidance of our elders and our ancestors that'll bring us through this. It brought us through everything always. And so we look forward to this, and, you know, we think all of our relations, you know, throughout the world and throughout, you know, the time that we spend together, and we hope that we're able to share with each other, and that we will listen in really good ways to our elder Gloria.
Thank
Am I
you.
supposed to talk now?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm Gloria Miguel, due to Copsus. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, in an Italian neighborhood. I'm Kuna on my father's side, Navahanik on my mother's side. There's a big long story of how they got together, but I think I'll just start with what someone asked me a question. I was born in an Italian neighborhood in Brooklyn, and so that made quite a interesting story to my life, or connection to the Italian nation, and the fact that my father, who was Kuna and a sailor, and he docked in Brooklyn at Erie Basin, and he had a fellow Kuna Yala people, Kunas we call them, and they walked up to my family's house because one of his buddies knew a native family. So they walked from Erie Basin to our house on the Gross Street, and my mother and father met, and they both fell in love with each other. So that was the beginning of my beginning. And I was born in 1926, and my grandmother was a functioning midwife in Rappahannock, and so I was born on the floor. And the three of us were born on the floor in Brooklyn, and then my father, in the Kuna style, took my placenta and buried it in the backyard. So my placenta is in the backyard in Brooklyn. And anyway, I grew up and went to school right across the way from our house. And my sister is still living in that house in Brooklyn. And going to school wasn't easy because I was so different from the other children who were mainly Italian. And so I was quite a exhibition, I guess. Since I was a child, everybody in Indians would mention, everybody would look at me, and when I walked down the street, they'd all go, woo, woo, woo. And I had to learn to live with that and not like it. But I think I'm just going to skip around and thinking from my mind. What was very good in my life was that my father was, besides being a longshoreman and working on the docks on the waterfront as a longshoreman, he always stuck to the river, the ocean. When he married my mother, he quit being an able-bodied seaman and just worked on various jobs, and finally on the waterfront. And so in the neighborhood, my family had some friends who were very Italian food, Italian drinks, Italian songs, customs. And I went to school with these children. And some liked me, some didn't. I was very quiet, so I had one or two friends, not as many as my sisters. They when they were born, they were, I guess they were more open to the world than I was. And I think what saved us is our tradition, my father's tradition and my mother's tradition, which we kept it. And my father, I'll focus on him right now because he was a showman. He sang, he danced, he told stories, and many of his fellow seamen would come every day almost off the boat into our house, and they'd sit and tell stories or kuniyala and sing songs and sometimes dance. And so that at home, I had that background. When I went out in the street, I was with the Italian folks, and at home, I was with my family and their tradition. And that had a very lot to do with my background. And I think it, years later, when we made Sun, Moon, and Feather, one of our shows, I asked some professors, how come they picked us to talk about us, you know? And they said that it's because of we kept our identity in Brooklyn in an Italian neighborhood, and it wasn't easy to do. And my father did follow the show business world, and in the 1930s, that's my beginning of my memory of the show business life. My father hooked up also with Native people in the Wild West shows who came to town, and some people in the show business that's going on in New York. And so they got danced and sang together, and we met people who we are still involved with. We met the Mofsey family, Louis Mofsey family, and we grew up with them. Muriel grew up, my sister Muriel grew up with Louis. I grew up until with a brother of Louis named Norton Mofsey. And we played together in the street. We played in the backyard. Our lives were very intermingled. And our parents were song and dance show business people. And through that, we met people from the Navajo Reservation, North Dakota, South Dakota, Oklahoma, Minnesota. And some of these people are still in our lives. As a matter of fact, when I was in Minnesota many years ago, I was talking to a young group of teenagers, and I mentioned that my father was a man from Minnesota. His name was Little Moose. And it so happened that Little Moose's grandson, I think it was his grandson, was in the group. So that you know, it was such a small world in that sense. And we met a lot of folks like Bill Snake from Wisconsin, and we're still involved with the fun makers. And as a matter of fact, my daughter, my grandniece is married to Kevin Tarrant, who's related to those folks. And I remember as a child, they would rehearse in our backyard, or they would rehearse in our apartments, singing and dancing. So all day there were people from Pueblo Reservation or Hopi, or you name it, singing and dancing and telling stories at night and singing and dancing at night. So that was a big part of our background. And then my father and his Kuna people and the Rappahannock people didn't come up till later. They were in the show business world at that time. And to this day, we're still connected and working together. But I remember my first, in Brooklyn also, there was a Methodist church, which my family joined. And they had ministers who were theologians, and they were a little different than the ordinary Christian world. They were intellectual and seekers and a thought of the world. They brought the world to us. I remember when I was a teenager and there was the World War II, they talked about conscientious objectors and the Japanese internment camp. And I learned a lot from that church, the group that I belonged to. And my first experience of performing was we performed, my family performed in a church group. I forget where the church was, in someplace in Brooklyn. And our family just was standing on some imitation rocks, and there was an American flag and a chorus in the background, and our family was sitting there, and the chorus sang, "Oh, beautiful for spacious sky." And that is a memory that I love and I hate, because it was picturesque, but in a way it told a lie, and that I was aware of that lie all my life. And my family used to go ballyhooing for movies, John Wayne movies. And that was interesting too, because they'd be on a big float traveling through the city, the microphone saying, "Come to see this movie with John Wayne," and all the Indians and our family were sitting on the float. And that was a very interesting experience. We have photographs of our family. I forget the name of the movie, but it was, I learned a lot as a child. And then when the Wild West shows came to Madison Square Garden, many of the people talked to each other about our family. So people would come to our family and stay for weeks. And sometimes when the show was over, they were stranded. A lot of people didn't have a place to go, so they came to our house. And I remember one day, which was something I never forgot, my mother and I were walking down Smith Street, and we see this man standing against a light post. And we look at him, we said, "That guy's an Indian." And so Mama said, "I'm going to go home and tell your father, because I don't think I want to go up. He might think I'm trying to pick him up or something." So we went home and told Daddy, and Daddy went down. And sure enough, he was Sioux from North Dakota, Rosebud, and he came to stay with us, and he stayed for 20 years. He went to the war from our house and came back again, and he was our babysitter. And we loved, his name was Douglas Grant, and we loved him very much. And I have another tale, but he passed away now. Of course, he would be quite old. But so we have many stories like that, where people came to our house and sang and left and never came again. And I would meet them somewhere in Minnesota or someplace again. "Oh, I remember you." And the Kuna men too, most of them we were related to. There were many stories about them, and they taught me some songs, and I connected to Kunayala, although I didn't get there until I was about 40 years old. But I felt as if I knew, those are my people. And one time I remember, at the end of the Depression, there was a big parade in New York City. And the leader of the parade was a man from South Dakota, I believe. His name was Crazy Bull. And he led the parade. And I was about 4 years, I don't know, about 4 or 5 years old. And I'll never forget, he was walking down singing "Happy Days Are Here Again," and that's the image I never forgot, because Crazy Bull was a famous Lakota man, and I have little stories like that. Many of them. We'd be here all day if I had to tell them. But as I grew up, I was very interested in theater and music. And I was going to be a singer. I wanted to sing. I was taking voice lessons. And at the age of 13, I decided, okay, I can sing and I'll be a singer. And I studied for a while. And then I decided with singing came theater. And so I joined a little theater groups in New York. I didn't go to school, although I tried to get into Juilliard, but I didn't pass the audition because I was told I didn't have a good academic background, which I didn't, so I didn't get to Juilliard. But I kept on studying here and there, and studying voice and being semi-professional, because I sang here and there. But then I decided, when I married my husband, which is another big story, I went to, he went to Stanford and then to Oberlin, Ohio, where he was a professor. And I decided to go back to school there. So I went for 3 years to Oberlin studying theater. So that gave me a good background. And although I was a married woman with 2 children, I went back to school and developed to a point where I could join my sister Muriel, who in the meantime joined a theater group called Open Theater in New York City. And my older sister was in a group called Magic Circle, I believe. And she was like singing songs and more of a Broadway performer. And in 1975, Muriel decided to get us all together. Another big story how that happened, but we all got together. And we started Spider Woman, and I became a professional actor. And that was in 1976, we had our first performance, and we're still going on. And I think that's what keeps me alive. Being able to use my creative abilities and whatever talents I have left, because I'm pretty old now, and still loving it very much. And of course, being a member, when I divorced my husband, I moved back to New York in the 70s also, and worked at the community house as a receptionist, and that was quite an experience for me. I liked that very much. And I did that till about 10 years ago, maybe. And now I am just doing theater. Is that enough? Do you want to know anything else?
Really great start. I want to know all the other little tangents where you were saying, oh, that's a whole nother big story, and that's a whole nother big story. I'm curious about what it was like in the beginning days of the community house and working as a receptionist.
At the community house?
Yeah, what it was like in those early days, because I didn't join the community house until, well, I moved to New York in 2008, 2009, so I have no idea what it was like back then, but I've heard it was a little different than it is now.
Oh, yeah. Well, let's see. Muriel, my younger sister, was a good friend of Rosemary Richmond. And Rosemary had, I wasn't there at the time. She had a lot to do with the beginning of the community house. And she was working there. Michael Bush from Cognawaga, I think, was the director. And since I had no I just moved back. I was divorced. I moved into West Beth. That's where I live now, artist housing in West Village. And I had to find a job. And Rosemary said, maybe you can find a job at the community house. So I went there, and automatically I was chosen to be a receptionist. And I did that from like 77 to 87. And then I went on to something else. But then I came back again in, I guess it was about 10 years ago, and worked there for 2 years. And then I just stopped. Oh no, community house moved, and I left. How was it? It was when I was first hired. We were on 38th Street off of Fifth Avenue, a 2-story huge building, and we had a gallery on the bottom and office space and lots of space on the second floor. So, and people came from all over. It was wonderful. We were very, very busy all the time, and I enjoyed very much being a receptionist. And we had art from all over the country in the gallery, and theater. That's where we had Spider Woman had our first rehearsal, and all kinds of other things going on, all kinds of groups and social workers and you name it, everything, a community house. And we had community people from all over coming every day. And it was really good. A lot of good folks, a lot of creepy folks, but it was everything. And, yeah, and then we moved to Broadway and Lafayette. We were there for a couple of years, and then we moved down to Bowling Green, where I guess I'm not into the details. We had to leave, and we moved to 29th Street, I think, and then we sort of moved somewhere else and petered out. And I don't, it would take us 2 years to go through the details. But it was fun. I loved it. There were so many things going on. It was my social life. Because I worked there. It was my social life. It was my creative life. And it was wonderful. I met a lot of people. It was wonderful, Janice. It was great.
That's great. I think Nadima is here, who also might remember some of those times. I'm actually going to unmute you, Nadima, and I'll let you mute and unmute yourself if you want to chime in on anything. Because I know you two. Oh, we have some people.
I heard the socials were fun back in the beginning too.
The what?
The socials, the early socials they had in the beginning, in the 70s, early 70s.
Oh yeah, they had, boy, I can't give you a list, but we had, besides theater, we used to have great powwows, and people came from all over. And I wanted to mention also, when I was a child, the people came down from Cognawaga. We used to call it Cognawaga then. I think they changed the name. They pronounce it a little different. And we lived on DeGraw Street in Brooklyn, and on State Street in Brooklyn, there was a family called the Deer family. And I grew up with them. They're in Canada now, the ones who are alive. And yeah, we were very close to that family. And there are many other people who moved to State Street, and that's where Rosemary lived for a while, and a lot of people named Deer, and they were working in New York City as iron workers, and so we had a few of those in my father's, or the group that performed in Brooklyn. Quite a few of those guys, and women I grew up with. I skipped way back. Anyway, there's so much to talk about. It's my whole life, more or less, you know. But
You can keep going if you want, or we have a couple questions that some people are typing in. I can read those.
okay.
Aru says, I would love to hear about the first Indian summer, 1992 or 1993, they think, that was planned. It was a hectic time that focused on local community house talent, Spider Woman Theater, and other local artists and visiting artists.
I believe that was,
Remember that?
she's talking about the Inwood Hill Park.
Hang on,
No.
Aru, I'm gonna unmute you, Aru, if you wanna elaborate on that.
But that's another period I didn't talk about, the Inwood Hill Park.
Oh, maybe that's what they're talking
The
about.
Hudson, they way up on 100 and something street, there was a park called Inwood Hill, and there was an Indian woman, and I forget her nation. And she was very old, and she lived in a little cabin there. And they used to have powwows, and people came from all over. And the first one the pictures I've seen now, I was about 4 years old when that first started. And that was a great powwow time. People came from all over and danced and sang, and a lot of friendship started from there. The social, where did she say who that question was?
I think actually she was referring to, because Lance also typed in here the summer programs that would happen every weekend on Lafayette Street, where the circle was a theater.
The summer program that year, that went on all year at Lafayette Street. We had something going on all the time.
Maybe Aru and Lance can chime in. We'll give them a chance to ask their questions. Might be easier.
Unmute yourself, Lance. I think you can unmute yourself.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, sorry, my internet was spotty. Hi, Gloria. I was just wondering a little bit more. I found recently on some online archives some footage of some of the shows that the Spider Woman Theater have done, and also different performances from different Indian summers. I don't remember when the first Indian summer was, but I believe it was like just a packed summer of visiting artists, performers, and also like highlighting local talent. And so I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more to that time. And also, I know you've worked closely with, or the Spider Woman Theater has worked with the Colorado Sisters and the Kodokyu theater troupe. So I just wanted to know a little bit more about that too.
Okay, let me see your face. Do I know you? Get up higher, just higher. Yeah, okay. I don't recognize your face, but with Hortensia and Vera, I'm very close to them. We're really buddies, and we haven't been working together lately, but we've they haven't been doing anything lately, but they're doing some research and writing, and I don't know if they're listening to this today, but yeah, they're still functioning as well as they can. Not the past month, nobody's functioning. But what is your name again? Your name? I lost you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now.
My name is Aru Apasa. I don't think we've met before, but I've been a part of the community house and around. But how did you meet the Colorado Sisters and how did your troops meet and start working together?
Oh, let's see. I live in artist housing, and I met Hortensia one day at a rehearsal in one of the buildings here, and we met at a water fountain. And I said, you look like I should know you. And she said, yes, I should know you too. So we became very friends. And she told me that a lot of times when she's walking down the street, people will say, hey, there's Spider-Woman Theater. So we were, connected in that way. And then we hooked up and they did a lot of shows with us and on their own. So, and I'm still connected. I call them every week. I haven't seen them lately, but what's your name again? So I'll tell. Yes. Okay. I lost you. Your voice.
My name is Aru Apasa. The host has to, since it's such a large group. Aru.
From where?
I'm Aymara.
Amada.
But I've met the Colorado sisters briefly. I don't think they would remember me.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well, I'll mention them, and you can connect with them through the community house. Okay. It's nice talking to you. You have a good face.
There was another question that Pete asked. Melissa, is this Mohawk? Do you want to read that? I don't want to butcher it, the beginning, but
He said piano.
Unmute Pete. I'm Pete. Where's Pete? Here we go. Pete, I'm going to unmute you, and you can ask your question. Are you there, Pete?
A question for Melissa. Okay.
No, it's from someone named Pete, but I don't know if he's there.
Pete.
Yeah, no, hey, Melissa, hey, everybody. Really good to hear this. It's such an awesome opportunity to hear you. Gloria, I met you many, many years ago when you were in Buffalo, New York at Buffalo State College. It was probably 20, 25 years ago. And one of the tours was Spider Women and everybody. I was really interested to hear more about the Wild West shows at the Madison Square Garden, because I'd heard about those and read about them, but I just wonder, what did you think about them? Did they create more awareness of Native people and develop pride, or do they more kind of reinforce stereotypes of Indigenous peoples?
I don't quite understand what your question was.
All right. Well, I'll have to pass because I have another call, but I just want to say hi to everybody, and maybe Tanis, you could read my question on the chat box.
Yeah, I will for sure.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us, Pete.
Oh, I look forward to the next time. I wish I could stay longer.
Okay, we'll see you then.
Take care, everybody.
Okay.
Take care.
Dude.
So Gloria, he said it's really good to see everyone. He wanted you to talk more about the Wild West shows. Who performed in them? What did you think of them? Did they create more pride or awareness, or did they reinforce stereotypes?
I guess they did both. But I enjoyed it because I learned so much from each nation that came to New York and stayed in New York and worked with us, like the Big Mountain family. They stayed with us a long time, as well as Douglas, our friend. And to this day, the Mofsey family, the Kevin Tarrant's family, that's where we met way back there. And we learned from each other. From the Seneca Nation that came down. There were some people that lived with us. I don't remember all their names. And the Pueblo people, the Navajo people, they all came and stayed, and we sang and danced and enjoyed just forever friendships. And we had a lot of powwows. We performed all over. For 1 year there, one summer, we were at a sort of like an Indian village in Canarsie, Brooklyn, and that we stayed there all night and camped out there, and then in the morning we'd start a show, and that was good. It was fun. but we were right next to the freak show. There was a freak show, the Indian Village, and the Headless Horseman, or whatever, and you know, that was sort of like misfort. It wasn't a very it says something, Indians and freaks, you know, so that there was sort of a negative feeling, but we did meet and have a wonderful time together. So there are always two sides to a story. And that went on for a long time. And then we met, as I said, in Wood Hill Park and Floyd Bennett Field and all over New York, all over. There's so many stories I don't know how to start, you know, but they're lifetimes, and a lot of stories we wrote about and performed in Spider-Woman Theater, working with also in that Wild West shows. There were a lot of cowboys and cowgirls, and we had good adventures with them and some very bad adventures with them. So it's just taught us a lot about life. Did that answer your question, sort of?
I think it did, yeah. Is there a good adventure that comes to mind that was maybe one of your favorite adventures that you can think of?
From the cars. I can't think of one particular story right now that, and I don't want to tell all the bad stories.
That's okay.
I'm trying to think of a good story.
Well, I can ask you another question. Ty wrote in a question asking, what is the story when Gloria and Ellen Stewart met?
When Gloria and Ellen Stewart, well, I met her. Muriel was working with Open Theater, and Ellen Stewart, I believe, was the dressmaker for the company for a while. And I believe that's true. And I went to a couple of rehearsals and I met her there. And then when she became the director of La Mama, she asked the theater company at that time with Hane Gigama, and he had a Native American in the arts, to stay in one of their apartments and write and perform. And I wasn't in the group yet, but they had a Native American in the arts, like a living quarters, and they all performed in and around La Mama. And I joined it a couple of years later, because I wasn't living in New York yet. But yeah, that's where I met Hane Gigama, Kiowa, who's in California now. But yeah, a lot of people are not with us anymore in New York or passed on. We're in that group, Native Americans in the art at La Mama. But I joined it later.
Oh yeah, I'm still unmuted. We're getting some more questions in. Fran says, remember the early days of the Shinnecock powwow? Where's Fran? Fran, I'm gonna unmute you, and then if you want to mute yourself again, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I know my mother and father and my aunt and uncle and Muriel, my sister, when she was very young, used to go there every summer. At that time, I believe I was living in New York City and about ready to move out into a different life. And so I didn't follow the family every weekend or every holiday to Shinnecock, but I know about them, and of course I've been there, and it was great functioning as a well. I wasn't in with my family. My family they went to every powwow, and at that time I was moving in another circle. Let's put it that way. And but my sister Muriel was involved, and the rest of my family. So, but I always remember it of going to those powwows, a big long trip, and staying at Grace Best's house, and having a marvelous time. A lot of friendships, from people from all over. What was the name of that person?
It was me, Gloria, Fran.
Oh, hi. Yeah.
I was on Facebook, but my phone went dead, so I had to switch over.
Okay, so Muriel and Rosemary were out there too, and I wasn't around so much, right?
Yeah, we were all out there, spending Friday, Saturday, and Sunday there. It was camping out and washing up in a basin and cooking outside, and it was just a glorious time. People worked I remember staying at the Mofsies in the winter, and we would make things that we would sell at the Shinnecock powwow in the summer. And, it was just it was a wonderful time that we were all there kind of growing up. I mean, I was like 13 when I started going, and it was small, and it just got bigger and bigger until it is what it is today. But it was mostly, we were more like family being there. We were all families.
I know my family was involved, but I was somewhere else at that time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Fran.
Well, thank you.
I think Ty had some questions. Where did Ty go?
Oh, yeah. Hey, Gloria.
Hi.
It's Ty.
How are you?
I am well. It's good to see you.
It's good to be here.
I had a question about because I had a question about your acting career, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you prepare for a role. Like
how I prepare for a role.
Yeah,
wow.
What do you do? What is the 101? What do you do?
I go in different stages, because when I first started, I was a little kid, and I remember one of the first roles I had to be a bee and sing a song, and so I prepared myself, and I just sang a song like I thought a bee would sound like, so so that started, just how you go about that. And then when I went into music, I didn't have to go through those exercises or anything like that. It just was my voice. But then when I went to, I guess, Oberlin, we started thinking about the exercises that get your emotions running, and your creative juices whirling, and how to work that into the words that you say and make the dialogue seem real. And I learned a lot working on my feet with Spider-Woman Theater. I'm still learning. And then I went to Strasbourg for a while. I went to Oberlin and then did Spider-Woman. And then about 20 years ago, I went to Strasbourg, and I got a whole new idea. So I have a combination of ideas, my own, what I learned in Oberlin and Strasbourg. And now I belong to a little group here at Westbeth, and I'm learning a lot. So I think there's so much to learn, just saying one or two words. That's hard to just go through it. You know, you have to go down into your memory and your body functions and experiences it. I'd have to talk to you for a long time to learn everything that I learned. Yeah, it's just, and I'm still learning. Still learning. So, that is your question?
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. I love how you started with the bee, the buzz of the bee. That's great.
Oh yes.
And what's it like being directed by your sister?
That was great. We got along very well. And sometimes I wonder how we did. You know, three sisters, and what works with three sisters and how different we are, and how we did fight. And, oh God, we had fights, but we put something together, and I think it was because my Oberlin background, Muriel's learning on her feet, and Elizabeth, who passed away, sort of like Broadway bound, you know. So all three together, we did pretty good. It was really amazing, and what we put together, and we just relived our lives in many ways. Many ways, just relived our lives as time went on, and all the different functions and the political atmosphere moved in with Wounded Knee and the women's movement, and you know, all the political aspects and our own crazy way of life and thinking, and but I guess that there's so much that I learned. You know, I wouldn't even know where to begin with you. You know, it's like, you know, someday we have to have a talk.
Oh yes, absolutely. And then I just have one more question, and it's about a dream role. And I was curious if you have played your dream role in life, or is it something that you're hoping, or is there a role that you really wish you could play in the future? Like, is it, you know, is it something?
A dream, my real dreams, or what I hope for?
Yeah, your dream role. You know, some people are like, I want to play, you know, King Lear, or I want to play, you know, Susie Q down the block. So I was just curious if you had a particular dream role that either you already played or you hope to play in the future.
I guess it's not a dream role, but it's where I am now and my age and how things are different. Life is different. Your feelings are different. And to really get a handle on that is a role that I'd like to do. I have a one-woman show, but it didn't go deep enough. I'm still learning about that. And I'm learning a lot being in my house. I only see one person who gives me my food and groceries and takes my garbage out since January. So I'm kind of nuts, you know, just not seeing anybody, but talking a lot on the phone. And I think within that, there's a dream role. There's some kind of a role of where I am now. And where will I go from here? And how will this flu virus affect my work? And I think it will.
Oh yeah, people are commenting, would love to see a new one-woman show.
Yeah, one-woman show alone in my little apartment in West Bend.
I would tune in. We would tune in. So thank you for your answers. It's good to talk.
Yeah, we can make that happen, Gloria. We got the Zoom going in your apartment now, so you can have a little show. We'll plan for that.
I have to start taking notes because it's strange. It is strange. It's so, you know, okay, I've been alone for 1 week or so, but since the beginning of February, alone, but I'm not really lonesome. People are talking, calling me, and this one man who comes to the door with his name is Jeff. He's marvelous. He's really great. He's my savior. And yeah, there's a lot of thinking going on, and a lot of fear, and a lot of scary stuff, you know. And yeah, there should be a show somewhere in there.
Yeah, just start writing. We have another question. I'm going to unmute someone who has the name Lenape everywhere.
Can you hear me now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's
My name is Ruth Ann.
yes.
Ruth means friend, and Ann means grace. So I hope I'm a friend of grace, or a graceful friend. And
Oh.
I live in Cheswell, Delaware, which is right across the Delaware Bay from Bridgeton, New Jersey, where my mother was born. And her mother was a midwife among the Nanacoke Lenape of Bridgeton, New Jersey. And every other generation, they crossed the bay. So the babies she birthed are married and live in the town where I live. And they just keep going across the bay, back and forth every generation. But some people married in from the Shinnecock. And of course, people do go up to the cities to get jobs. And anyway, so my question, living in a rural area and working with the youth of our local tribal group to restore a relationship with the water and the water culture and the natural remedies and the indigenous foods. I'm wondering how your family, as you were growing up, maintained a relationship of honor and respect for the earth, and especially how did you find herbal remedies or sweetgrass or sage or the maybe sassafras, the things that maybe your elders taught you about? How did you find those, and how did you stay connected with the natural world?
Well, I guess my biggest connection would be my grandmother, who didn't believe in going to the hospital to have a baby. That, and you know, that, and we were all born at home, and we were ill. She had all kinds of different medicines that we would try to get. Not me, my mother, and so. And I even forget the name of them, but she had a whole group of medicinal ideas. She saved her whole family in the first flu.
Wow.
And one son died of that first flu, but she just gave them medicine of, and I don't know, believe me, we had a backyard, but I don't remember any herbs. She just had thoughts and ideas and feelings. And of course, from the Kuna, they're way down south and off the coast of Panama, their medicines I never learned, just some of them I learned, and the food. And then people who came from different parts of Canada, Central and South America, and the West, they brought medicines and sage and grass and to us. So I guess our native family brought things to us. But in the city itself, it was difficult. I don't know where my grandmother found all her remedies. And my father had a few, but I guess he just remembered, or some of the people who came from Kuniyala gave it to him. Basically, I did get it from all the other folks who came from Nebraska and Arizona and California and Oklahoma. And
Well, maybe as I learn to restore the indigenous herbal remedies of our area, I could send you some.
Oh yes, oh yes. My daughter said I should have some elderberry,
Yeah.
and I don't know how to get that right now. But for my immune system, living here alone, yeah, that's a very good question. We survived, and we did get some remedies and medicine, but I think I was more connected to the Western world and the doctors in my life, and my daughter is trying to get me back to it because she's involved with that. And in those days also, I never met any Lenape. They never came to the city proper, so I only met the people from the Lenape within the last 5 or 10 years. You know, the name of it, there was Canarsie, there was Pinnacock, the Mohawk folks, and there's so many, and from Canada and South and Central America. But we just met a few people recently within the last 5 years. So, you know.
Well, I think the the people who stayed behind had to pass for black or pass for white or pass for something, because you were not allowed to be an Indian in this area for a very long time. And in our tribal group, most of the people intermarried with 3 Delaware Bay tribes. And I steward a cemetery where I'm learning how to do cultural mapping and create an interactive map where the artists can upload creative storytelling about each person in their family. And so this one cemetery has the 3 Delaware Bay tribes all intermarried. And we do have some connection to the Ramapo Mountain people and to the Shinnecock, and you know, we have some connections, but the strongest connections were right around the bay, you know. But it was wonderful hearing these stories, and I hope if you remember any herbal remedies or any stories about natural remedies, I hope you write them down.
Okay. As I said, it was my grandmother, and she kept it a secret, more or less, whatever she did. But she could, because she did cure us when we were kids and do things that I never knew how she did. She has so if I ever think of any.
I know one.
Yeah.
Who said that?
Am I muted? No, I'm not. Describe
my daughter.
the asafoetida pouch that you used to have to wear in the winter. Can you describe that?
Yeah, we used to wear that around our neck. That's right. My daughter remembers more than me. Hi, Monique, my daughter.
Hi.
Hi, daughter. Nice to meet you.
Can you describe that and what your grandma did and what it was for and how you felt about it?
Oh, well, yeah. She used to put whatever it is and wrap it up in a cloth and tie a string around it, and I used to wear it around my neck, and I didn't take it off, so it got a little funky once in a while. But I never heard the word asafoetida till I don't know what she called it later on. And Monique remembers it more than I do, because I guess I didn't feel so great about all winter wearing this rag around my neck. No. And so I'm glad you remembered that.
You said it smelled bad.
Yeah. Thank you, Monique. And from Toronto.
I think Emily might have a suggestion for you, Gloria. Hi, Emily.
Hi. Hi, Gloria.
Emily.
Hi, how are you? I'm wearing glasses, so you might not recognize me right now.
You know, I met you at that little function that they had down in, I think, Emily.
Oh, here, let me take these off, maybe. And I have a hat on. I have so many layers. Yeah.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Okay, Emily.
I was suggesting I could bring over some elderberry if you'd like some. I have it in liquid form, or I can get the lozenges like Fran was talking about. I could drop them off if you'd like.
I guess I should try both. And
Okay.
my daughter was the one who could tell me how I could use it.
Okay.
Emily from the Henry Street Settlement. No?
Well, yeah. Well, living on the Lower East Side, yeah. From Alaska. Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
God,
I have your
you're
quilt.
different.
All of those.
Oh,
Yes.
Kim touches me. I lost your number or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to leave it downstairs by the desk. No one's allowed to come up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in quarantine because I'm old.
Yeah. And I'll wipe it down. I've been doing lots of food deliveries, so I kind of know that protocol. I'll leave it down there.
Oh, great, good. You can leave anything else you like.
Okay.
Cookies, yeah.
Good idea. We'll send it. We'll put together a care package. That'll be
Great. Now I know who you are.
good. I was wondering too, because you were talking so much about your life in the arts from being a little one all the way through to now, and now thinking about making a new show, and I'm just wondering if you have thoughts about what is our job now, or what's our responsibility as artists right now? You've seen so much in your life, and now we're in this moment of a very particular crisis, and we're separated from one another, but we're trying to live through and try to find what this future together will be. And I guess I'm just wondering what you think our responsibility as artists is right now in this moment.
Well, right now I'm so busy taking care of my day-to-day life. I have a thought that this is going to change my life, and I don't know how. But I think one of the big things is connecting to everybody, men, women, children, all ages, so that we can help each other. Because I also found out that young people don't know exactly, except for maybe the glamour of being old and having wisdom, that they don't know an older person, or an older person who's a little different. And there's so much to know and find out. Like my grandson tells me things about younger people, but and I have a great grandniece, Josephine, but I don't see them enough. I don't see everybody enough. So I think we should get to know each other by seeing more of each other. And then, you know, before the flu, I was, you know, a little isolated and alone, but I had to go out and say, okay, Gloria, say, hey, I'm still here. You know, call me once in a while. Invite me some. So if we just do that automatically, not that it's a chore that I have to see my old friend, it would be easier. And then we'd learn automatically from each other. But I know life is going to change. I know it's going to be different. It's such a dynamic experience. You know, I've never in all my life been in a situation like this. So it's going to change me. So there's a lot of things I haven't even thought about what can we do, but I know we can't do it without connecting. You know, and it's good to have something like this, you know. And I may be the old community person here. I don't know. Everybody says they're old, but they're not as old as me. So I don't know if we all could get together, young and the old, and male and female. it would be good
Mm. Mm.
when this is over.
Mm. Yeah.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
I hope I answered it
Yeah.
somewhat.
No, you did. Thank
you.
I might take us back to your acting days because we have a question about Spider-Woman. Somebody asked if you could talk about the story weaving process that you do and how that originated in Spider-Woman.
Let's see. I think Josephine Mofsey belonged to a small group that Muriel had before Spider-Woman. And she told Spider-Woman tales. And from the Spider-Woman history, I believe it's in out near Arizona, New Mexico, the Spider-Woman. Well, there's a Spider-Woman edifice, a statue. Anyway, and stories came from there. And Josephine Mofsey used to tell those stories. And it was like Spider-Woman wove, as she told stories, she would weave. And with each weaving, I'm not a weaver, but each thread is a story, a different story. So we took that whole image from different places that we came to with different images and different stories to put them all together and weave them together. When we first started it, then Josephine passed, so she didn't continue. And we named the group after her storytelling. As time went on, we decided we had to add other things besides the story itself, like a dance or a song or an image or whatever we thought of to sort of like cement the stories. And we started with an idea, violence in the women's lives, or spirituality, or the hokey plastic shaman that we had to deal with sometimes. Those are many stories, like traveling around the world, people think you have all this wisdom and you have this magic. And, as I say, I don't have that much wisdom or magic, but people expect that from you. Weave in that story, weave in stories, love stories, or hate stories. We have a lot of that in us, and fear and molestation, all those things, all pertaining to our lives, where we come from, what group do we come from, and what urban or reservation. And there's so much, like I keep on thinking it's like the tip of the iceberg, all those stories that had to come up. So what we did was everybody tells a story. We chose a subject. Everybody, it's violence, okay? What of the violence in your life is, and then talk about different stories you have of violence, and then putting that on its feet, writing it down, and then telling it, and then taking it apart and putting it together and adding to it. And it is great. It's a whole wonderful experience. I love it. There's my daughter.
Yes.
What?
Right. I'll be right back.
Okay. So it's a big, long process, and it can still change. We do other things with it. There's so many things that we haven't even approached. And when each person comes in, they change it a little bit into different groups. Does that answer your question?
I think it definitely speaks to the story weaving. Based on my experience with working with Spider Woman, that's exactly how our rehearsals went. We would get our topic of whatever the show was going to be about, and then we each had to take turns getting up and telling a story about that topic, and just describing it, and then that eventually got weaved into the show with everyone else's stories. Muriel would weave it all together, and we'd all jump in and help each other flesh it out. So I think that's a really good description. Lance has a question about the name of the Spider Woman's first show at the community house on 38th Street. Was it called Women in Violence?
Women in Violence, yes.
Yeah.
That was it. That was our first show.
That was your inaugural show, because that's actually the show that we ended up remounting and turned it into Material Witness, right?
Partially.
Kind of like the same topic, women in
on violence, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's and the thing is that after 40 or so years, sometimes the story didn't it's still there, the violence. I just changed little bits of my story, but it's still happening. Yeah. And it's also, I discovered, healing, because sometimes you can't live with all that hate and fear, and after a while it just heals you. You could, some people say, how can you tell that story over and over again? Well, I guess I was healed, and I can retell it in a different way than the first time I ever told it. So I use a lot of stories of healing myself, and just knowing myself better.
Yeah, definitely. Someone else asked a question about theater that I think is along this topic. They're getting ready to start teaching acting, but as I go back to the books and sources that I was taught when in acting school, they are very colonial, so often patriarchal and white supremacist. Can you talk a little bit about decolonizing theater?
Yeah, I think that's what we tried to do with Spider Woman, because I realized that Shakespeare and Chekhov, what you learn from their stories are so different from what you learn from our experience. And how do you start changing all that? Because just the idea of believing in colonialism, sometimes you yourself believe in it because you're raised in it, and how to say, hey, that wasn't true. I should tell the feeling about how that story started within me, not from the colonial world, and just to figure out how that could be done. And of course, I do respect Shakespeare and Chekhov and all those guys. I learned a lot from them. But then it's so exciting to go back and rethink your life in terms of what the colonial world did to you, and tell a story from there. It's a whole different experience, and there's so much to talk about it. It's just you have to be doing it, working on it, and it changes all the time. It always changes from our point of view, and even our point of view is different because we come from different nations and different temperatures and different, and it's very exciting. It goes on forever. Did that answer your question?
I think so. Yeah, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
That was somebody on Facebook watching, because we're also streaming this on Facebook Live. So people are typing in lots of things in the comments. A lot of people are saying hello and that they love this. Thank you for doing this. Tahanish says, thank you for sharing with us.
Yeah.
Good
Yeah.
hearing your voice and seeing you. Lots of talk about elderberry syrup. Love you for saying hi. I'm going to unmute Nadima because Nadima might have some stories to bring up here. Just a second. I think you should be unmuted now.
Okay, here I am.
There we go.
Well, before I even start, I just want to ask Gloria if the Crazy Bull, the Mr. Crazy Bull is related to Cheryl Crazy Bull, the president of the American Indian College Fund.
Probably with that name. I don't
Yeah.
know for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know for sure, but I did meet him, and he worked with my father. So,
Okay.
but I was very young.
Okay. And the other thing I wanted to mention is when you were talking about those villages, and there's was a woman named Rosebud Yellowrobe who I met as an older woman, but she as a very young woman met Orson Welles. And the Yellow Robes are a Lakota family, and the father, Chauncey, made the first silent movie. He was like the first silent movie actor. And they have a descendant who lives in Brooklyn. Her name is Karen Moy. So
I don't know that
you
story.
don't know the Yellow Robes? Okay.
I think Yellow Robe, didn't she work at the community house once? Someone?
She might have, because she wrote a children's book. And that's when I first met her. She was already a very elderly woman, and I was a young woman. So this is like a long time ago.
Oh, yeah. And then also Louis Mofsey's great aunt, Redwing, was one of the first people who worked in the movies. And yeah, there's a lot of writing about her. And of course, I met her and her sister, Aunt Julie, and they used to come to visit Louis' mother, Veen. And yeah, she was, Redwing was instrumental in the movies too. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm writing my memoirs. And so I have some little blips from my memoirs that I want to read because it's more concise and, and one of them is because I was part of the American Indian movement and we called ourselves Amets, girl Aimsters. The guys were Aimsters and the girls were Amets. So this one is Stories of an Amet. After seeing Angela Davis on the HBO documentary entitled The Blacklist, I remember that she wore one of my specially designed bone chokers. It was in the heyday of the American Indian movement, and we were all headed for the Madison Square Garden rally where Russell Means made an inspiring speech. He talked about the traditional drum as the classical music of the Americas and held up a Lakota newborn to the cheering crowds. At one point backstage, we were accompanying Russell as he passed Jane Fonda, who said to him, "Oh, Russell," in a manner that I thought she would swoon. He turned to us and said, "Who the hell is that?" He didn't recognize her without her makeup from the Barbarella days because she was going through her homespun activist period at the time. So that was like the heyday of AIM. And I wanted to continue with the Choker Chronicles. The same evening at Madison Square Garden, Angela Davis was speaking, and I was introduced to her by Maria, her bodyguard, and my teaching colleague, who was at the same junior high school. Maria had purchased a choker for me as a gift for Angela. that she wore in solidarity with the Native American contingent. Maria told her, "This is the Native American sister who made your choker." Angela turned and approached me with a tremendous smile and a warm handshake. Greg Allman also wore one of my chokers, but that was another story. I had met him at an Allman Brothers concert in Madison Square Garden, where I, as part of the Native American delegation, was a guest of Dickie Betts' wife, who was an Ojibwe woman from Canada. She had a sister who ran a survival camp up in the north of Sault Ste. Marie in the woods of Canada with her husband. I spent time up there with my Ojibwe boyfriend, Victor, with the green eyes. Getting back to Greg, I remember that he was admiring my choker, as stoned as he was, and offered me money. I wasn't comfortable with that and turned to ask one of the traditional people, who gave me the okay. Then I sold it to him for 50 bucks. When I came home and told my family, my brother said, "You're really dumb. You could have gotten 1,000 from him." Oh, well. Another choker story is connected with meeting Harry Belafonte. On my way to the Bismarck Airport from the American Indian Movement gathering, I shared a vehicle with Julie Belafonte, who admired my bone choker. We were returning from the first American Indian gathering a year after the Wounded Knee takeover in 1973. It was a momentous event for me on a personal level, also because it was the first time I had set foot on my Lakota ancestral homeland, the Standing Rock Sioux Reservation. So Julie, like my New York style, ordered chokers from me and gave me her address on the Upper West Side, where I eventually delivered them. I remember being so disappointed not to meet Harry, but because the chokers were too large, I had to redo them to her specific neck size and returned. On my second visit, Harry was at home, but I did not know it. Julie had invited me to partake of a beverage, and I stepped away for a moment, and while I was holding my drink, I heard a voice, unmistakably that of Harry Belafonte, saying, "What pretty rings you have." And I had a lot of rings, because in those days we wore rings on almost every finger. I didn't want to appear awestruck, so I turned my face to my left and did an imaginary scream so that I could turn to my right with composed gentility and say thank you. That night, not only did I dine with the Belafontes and their dinner guests, I was Harry's partner in a game of pool. The next chat, a little blib, is called Aboriginal Aimsters.
Is that your memoirs? You said you
Yes.
have a bunch of them, right? Oh, okay. We wanted to feature you next week on Sacred Spaces, so maybe we
Okay,
could go
so
through them a
why
little
don't
bit more.
why don't I just, leave that for next week?
Yeah, that's your teaser.
Okay, that's my teaser. So
Yeah.
what do you think so far?
It sounds amazing. We look forward to it. But do you have any like memoirs of specifically with Gloria that you want to maybe trigger a conversation together?
Well, I don't have anything written, but I have a lot of memories with Gloria, because Gloria has always, whenever I've asked Gloria something, she's always come through for me. Gloria, you remember when I was doing the People's Center at the American Museum of Natural History, and I asked you to come in and talk about the Kunas, people of San Blas Islands, and you came in and you wore your beautiful outfit. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
Yeah, you came and you did. I said, Gloria, and Monique, I remember Monique, the first time I laid eyes on Monique was wearing her Kuna regalia at the American Indian Movement gathering in Mobridge, was it Mobridge, South Dakota? Monique, do you remember? She's not on, she's not.
I remember Standing Rock.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, that was down in Mobridge, South Dakota on Standing Rock. I remember we had a powwow and Monique was dancing and she kind of stood out because, everybody was wearing North American indigenous regalia, and here's this incredibly beautiful woman walking in this beautiful sandblast regalia. I mean, she just blew me away. And I remember that. And then another time, Gloria, remember I invited Gloria to my birthday celebration about 10, 12 years ago at the community house. I had my 60th, and I had invited all these people from the community as that was my birthday gift to me, you know. And Gloria did she did one of her dramatic pieces, and Penna read read poetry, and we had some dancers. Mary Henneque and Larry came, and she did, you know, her dancing and stuff. So yeah, Gloria, and then also recently Gloria came last summer. Was it? No, not this, not 2019, but 2018. I can't remember really. But anyway, Gloria came, and Gloria talked about the fact that her sister Muriel that her godmother was the lady that is a very famous native lady that used to run a pottery school in Inwood Hill Park. Her name, they called her Princess Naomi. Remember, Gloria?
Yeah.
And I know Leota Lone Dog, a lot of you may or may not know who she is, but Leota did a lot of scholarship about New York City and that particular part of the city, and wrote an essay. I oversaw this thing called Indigenous Geography of New York City that was never published for the Smithsonian, which really pissed me off because I worked on it for 2 years. We compiled essays, video, interviews, soundtracks, all of this stuff. But I remember that Leota wrote about that lady. And I remember that Leota had an exhibit at the American Indian Community House when we were at 708 Broadway. And it was all about that time. And she did a lot of scholarship. She's an incredible scholar. I don't know if she's published, but we really need someone like her who's done that specific scholarship in this area, you know? And so, yeah, Gloria and I go back, you know, I remember Gloria being at the community house, and Gloria, were you involved with Body Indian, that play that my husband was in?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that, my, you know, the Colorado sisters,
Back? Okay.
she's, okay. The Colorado sisters were talking about it. One time they were all laughing because, you know, they had to play a role where they had to get in bed with my husband, you know? And so they were talking about that and laughing about that one. But yeah, my husband was in Body Indian. And I remember that really strongly because I actually still have the program and what was your, Gloria, what was your role in that, in Body Indian?
I was one of the aunts.
Okay.
That was a sad story. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, yeah, I've been aware, and Gloria's sister Muriel and Louis and I went together from New York to Michigan. And Louis was, we missed our flight, and they put us on a Cessna, and it was so tiny, and we were so scared, a little tiny freaking plane, you know? And I remember Louis was sitting in the front, and he was reading the Village Voice like if it was gonna make him less nervous to read the Village Voice. He was reading the Village Voice in the front of the plane. We were so scared. And Muriel did a dramatic program. I brought my artwork, my visual arts, and Louis did his thing. But I will never forget that, being in that plane with Louis and Muriel to the day I die. That was so so funny. Like, we was just trying to be nonchalant. Let's read, let's read the Village Voice, man. And this plane was like the size of a Volkswagen Rabbit that was like with, you know, with wings. And you could feel like every like bump, you know? And then there were all these other, you know, there's all these stories about when you were talking about the Hene Gegama and how they had the Native American Theater Ensemble. It was called Nate, and it was a lot of Oklahoma Indians. It was mostly Oklahoma Indians. And it was Hane, Bausch, there was Allen, and Pete Dyer, who was Choctaw. And there was Nikki, who's still, hopefully still alive. We call him Nikki Five Tribes. I saw him some years back at the powwow, one of the powwows. Yeah, and then we had, you know, we had that group, and it was really an amazing time, like Gloria said, because there were so many different people from so many different tribes coming in, and it was just a crazy time in history. It was a time, you know, of people, the American Indian movement, and I remember that I was telling Rick and Anna that I went to NYU, and I met Charmaine at NYU. She was a student there, and I was sitting down, and this guy came over to me, and he says, "Are you a freshman?" And I say, "Yeah." And he says, "Well, are you Puerto Rican?" I says, "No." He says, "Well, what are you?" Because, you know, in New York, if you were Black or Puerto Rican or white, they didn't know what you were, you know. And so I said, "I'm American Indian." And it was, "Oh, there's another American Indian student here." And lo and behold, Charmaine came over, and we formed our first American Indian Club. And as you know, Charmaine was here last year for the, was it the year before? I can't even remember. Well, we had that gathering of all the people that were founders of the community house, and Charmaine was there. They brought her in from New Mexico. So yeah, so we had the NYU contingent, and so I remember going to the community house before it was at 38th Street, Gloria. It was in a small little office, and before that, it was, maybe that was the office that was in the church, or where the base, we had like a church basement with a stage. Because I remember Joe Cross's wife, Donna, she was doing a presentation in that theater. And I remember that Tanya Fritzner first started out in working with the community house in this office that wasn't 38th Street, but then we moved to 38th Street. And I remember I had my baby shower on the second floor of 38th Street. And do you remember Wilma DeVerso from New Jersey? She was a Lakota lady. And then there was Carol Van Norman. She was also, yeah, Jennifer?
Thank you so much, Nadima. I'm learning a lot. I wanted to know, Gloria, are you aware, I know this is gonna sound weird, but it's true. Are you aware of the impact Spider Woman has had on Indian country theater? I was, I think 16 when I saw you, the first show of yours that I saw, and it blew me away. And then I got to meet your daughter through my cousin. But anyway, I've just watched, observing from where I sit and where I live, and just seeing the impact that your work has had on all Indian country theater through the US, Canada. And I'm just wondering if you were aware of that And I hope that you look back fondly on your career and understand the huge, enormous, whatever the adjective is, impact that your work has had. And if you really are thinking of doing another one-woman show, no pressure.
Well, I'm thinking about it now. I'm sort of aware because of the calls I get, the people I talk to, and it did surprise me when I heard that they were teaching Sun, Moon, and Feather in college, and performing it, things like that, and that they use information about us in colleges. That was exciting. Yeah, well, we've been around a long time. I guess that's why it's one of the things. We're one of the first group of Native women who were really serious about the importance. It wasn't just showtime. It wasn't just being in theater as actors. We had something to say, and I think that was one very important to Native people, because we had something very important to tell people and maybe even teach. Okay, hello? I hear a little noise. Anyway, so I have an idea, and that's a good feeling. That's good. We didn't do all this work just to be famous actors. We had something else going for us. That's very important.
I have a question. I guess I'm you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about the work that you've done in community, the community work that you've done in theater, whether it's been in urban centers, like the work that you did with the AIDS Task Force and Sharon Day back in the day in Minneapolis, or the work that you did in Navajo country? Like when you've taken this work, or the work you did with Gila River with women, and how the work that you have done with Spider Woman has gone back into the community on a real grassroots level.
Yeah, and that's when we began about 20 years ago. I realized that how important we were in terms of women and reservations and what they go through, because we performed Gila River, I guess it was, and at the end of the performance, women came up and said, as if they were whispering, "That happened to me. And that happened, I know that story. That happened to me." And so many women came up and they were sort of whispering. And we realized that this is the subject we were talking about. Abuse of women was so important that everybody was going through it, but they were afraid to talk about it. And they felt that we were so brave to do it. And I guess the stories were true, but to get out of just keeping it in, we needed some exercises in theater to bring it out. And so we started or suggested they, in that community, start their own women's group talking and maybe performing to heal. And in terms of healing, how important these stories are. And we did that several times, several places. Sometimes with very young kids, teenagers, they said, "Oh, we like to tell our stories, but we don't like to get on the floor and kick and roll, But I said, in order to get this story out and put it on its feet, you got to do those exercises to get so that you remember that story and try to tell the story without screaming and crying. tell it as a story. And so how important that is. Like, so some kids said, oh, I don't like doing these exercises. I just want to go to Hollywood. You know, that's so just to get the idea of it. It's not only something you do for your, to be recognized and show your creativity, but it's something that is so useful and so necessary to help people heal. And that's why I'm trying to think everything I can do just being isolated here in order to heal too. But it's yeah, many different experiences like that. I realize there's another importance besides being performers. And I don't like to call myself a healer, but it's in a way, if you do some of these exercises, some that we learned in school, some that we made up, it's going to help in many ways, all ages. I'd like to get a group of older women together. Wow, that would be great. To get their whole stories, you know, on the surface. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I just
Oh.
wanted to talk about the work that you've done, that Spider-Woman did, that connected this work back into the communities, both urban and reserve.
Yeah. It's quite different sometimes in the urban community and the reserve and the age, and yeah, and I'm always surprised and sort of it gets tingles down to my feet when people tell me how important our work is and how it affected them, you know, because sometimes you just do it and it happens, you know. You don't say, I'm going to do that to help those people, or you do it because it happened to you and it has to be told, you know. And yeah, there's all different reasons, but all the experiences of you know, even if there's sometimes a very small group. We were just in Canada in November, and sometimes only about 10 people came out to see it. But they would always say something like, "Oh, I needed that." You know, that is so true. Everybody has to think that way so that we can heal. And so I keep on saying to myself, yeah, but this is important. This is what we have to do. And more of it.
Hey, Gloria, this is Ty again. Hi. Yeah. Okay, I'm putting my face up so you can see me. Very cool.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. I have a question, and my question is about, is there a time, you know, working with these communities that you have, as, you know, an artist and as a teacher, witnessed something extraordinary in a student or a community member? And I was wondering if you could talk about your experience where you witnessed someone sort of change, right? How these theater tools that you're talking about, how it changed someone from your point of view.
Well, I can't remember it happening, you know, overnight, but I've heard from other people that they decided to maybe go back to school, or they decided to leave a bad situation or do something about a bad situation. And yeah, that's very nourishing to me too, because it could happen all the time. You know, yeah, there are many stories that I just don't have them on the tip of my tongue right now, or maybe, you know, but yeah, I know there are stories. My daughter is very good at making me think about, oh, I forgot about that. You know, I can't
Oh,
think of it. She's good. She remembers all those stories.
yeah, good daughter.
Yes, she's marvelous.
Gloria, I'm actually one of those people that whose life has changed because of working with you. What I talked about earlier when I brought up working with you in the rehearsal process, getting up and telling our stories when we were working on Material Witness, I had a moment where I thought, I don't have a story to tell. And then it occurred to me in that process, I remembered a story that happened to me that I had forgotten about, that I had buried. And I got up and told it. And I didn't realize the effect it had on me until I told the story to you all in rehearsal. And it eventually got weaved into the show. And I went through my own discovery and unpacking of that incident and went through my own healing process working with you all on that show. And it inspired me to get into my filmmaking career because I ended up turning that little short story into a short film that then sparked me producing other things. So I'm definitely one of those people whose lives you've had a huge impact on. So thank you for that. And
That's wonderful. That's good to hear.
Talk about the, working in that way and some people having resistance to, oh, I don't want to lay down on the floor. And sometimes I'm like that too, because I have an MFA and, it's very colonial. And we did have, we worked a little bit in the way that Spider Woman works, but not fully. And so when working with you all, it was good to force myself to let go and be open to that process because it is so different from the traditional acting process. And I think it's so valuable to flex that process muscle versus the traditional. So it's something that I try to remember when I'm working on anything. So you've had a huge impact on me and I thank you.
That's wonderful. It's good to hear.
So we're just gonna wrap up. We only have a few minutes left. So just wanted to say thank you so much on behalf of the American Indian Community House for joining us and sharing all these amazing stories with us. And thank you everybody for joining us. And we're gonna do this every Wednesday. Everyone's free to join in and we will Facebook live stream. Gloria, do you have any final words? Anything else you want to say?
No, but yeah, I'm enjoying this very much. Once I get into it and press the right buttons. And, and I'm looking forward also to seeing everybody live in person. But this is a wonderful to get out of our whatever we're in now. And thank you. It's very good, very good.
Oh, well, I'm gonna unmute everybody, and if anyone wants to say goodbye. Or...
Thank you, Gloria. Wonderful stories. Thank you.
Thank you. Love you, Gloria.
Gloria, thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Monique.
Hey, Tough New York.
Thank you, everybody.
Last time I saw you, Monique, the last time I saw you was New Zealand.
That's right.
Next time, everyone.
All right, good night.
Thank
you, Gloria.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yay, good medicine.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for your patience, Gloria.
Night, Gloria.
See you, Gloria.
Wonderful. It's good to see you.
Call you later.
Everybody.
All right. Pamapi.